this session really has been designed as a conversation. And the focus area is really going to be double clicking on this whole piece about recruitment and recruitment innovation. I think in the morning we have heard already the challenges that organizations are going to be facing. Okay. Can somebody request Leela to stop doing construction at this very moment? Yeah, thank you, thank you. So coming back to the topic at hand on recruitment, we saw in the morning the talent paradox and how organizations are really struggling to find the right talent. And on the other hand, the number of resumes seems to just be increasing more and more so. So we're going to focus on 3-4 things in this panel discussion. One is, how is technology really making a difference when it comes to recruitment? And we've heard a lot, but what is it really that's happening and what's working? The second discussion that we want to have with all of you is to rethink about structures. Is the current structure of the recruitment community or the recruitment function working? What are the skills that are most important for recruiters today? And when I refer to recruiters, it doesn't necessarily only mean the person who has recruiter as a designation, but all of us, whether we are heading HR or we are business leaders or lead a particular P&L function in the organizations, we ourselves are recruiters as well. And we are going to finish the panel today with thinking about what does it really look like to hire for a visionary CEO. So that's the plan, but we're going to come to you for questions. Nilu, I understand we take questions from the app, right? Okay, so when I say questions, then we will be able to see the questions on the screen. Awesome, fantastic. So keep sending the questions and we'll stop as we go through the 35 minutes we have together to take those questions. So thank you so much, Ganesh, Bijay, and Yubraj for being with us. 3 very different leaders on stage. So Yubraj represents the HR community, and he brings tremendous experience in administration and HR. Vijay represents the product, because Belong is a next generation outbound hiring product. So you bring that hat on really helping us understand from product perspective. And Ganesh, you bring the business and the operations. So it's great to have you also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You're not telling everyone that you put me in the middle because I'm half the age of...
Well, you're also a business guy and you're also serving the HR community. So you are in the middle. So let me start with you, Vijay, on this. We've heard a lot about AI, machine learning, outbound hiring, and how that's really changing the way we do recruitment. But what does that really mean? Is it something that is actually happening, or is it something that we just read somewhere in People Matters and we reflect about it? And how much of it is a fact? How much of it is a fact? Tell us more.
Sure. So actually, I'll start with a small story. So basically, me and my co-founder Rishabh, once we sort of started growing a little bit, I realized that I'm really good at finance, right? And like the company expenses were going here and there, and I wasn't sure like where we were spending what. So I basically said, hey, we need to go hire like this VP finance or like this senior person in finance or a CFO maybe, right? And then Rishabh said, yeah, let's go do this. And Rishabh said he'll become the recruiter for the role. Because the senior role, we sort of thought the founders should sort of spend time on it. And then like for 2 months, so this is the job description we created, right? So, finance guy, should have taken an internet company public in India, should be of this degree, vagara, vagara, right? And after like 1 month of like hunting around, meeting, trying to like reach out to a lot of people, we realized, hey, wait 1 second, there are only like 3 companies that have gone public in the internet space in India, right? So the criterion of the person who would have taken that company public now basically brings the subset down to 3 people. And we've been like hunting around for 30 days without like really sort of using the fact that, hey, let's go first plan the strategy of who we want to hire, and are those people available? Because we can't like create internet public company finance people, right? Like it's not something that we can just go outside and create overnight. And I think at that time what sort of struck to us is that like Google has Google Maps, which is like, you know, here's your GPS, where you have to go, put a distance, put a direction, and sort of just head out. And we're like, why aren't we sort of doing something similar in trying to sort of figure out, if I have to hire a CFO or a VP finance, why don't I do a talent landscape? Why don't I try to understand what kind of people are available, what salaries are they at, who are they worked with, and then decide to sort of focus on hiring them, right? And the interesting thing that why potentially AI, ML, big data is possible today is also because there's a lot of public data that's available. Apart from this data that's sitting inside, let's say, HRMS systems that, you know, organizations like Dell, MakeMyTrip, etc. would have, There's also a lot of public data that's available that sort of enables you to sort of use all the private data that's internal inside your HRMS systems, and also potentially use this public data to sort of do better matching. And that's where it sort of started from, where we said, hey, you should like sort of really have talent maps before you sort of go hunt, and that's where data and all this machine intelligence comes into place. Just one more quick insight that has sort of started working for us, where we've noticed, I'm going to go louder than this construction. But one thing that's worked really well for us is that we've noticed hiring managers, right? Anyone, if any of you have done hiring, have people done hiring here? I'll just like, that's it? Okay, much better, okay, fine. So if you've done hiring, typically you're forced to write in English language what you actually feel, right? But what you actually feel is, I want to hire someone like Ganesh. I want to hire someone like Yuvraj, right? But you're forced to write it down in English language. What if AI, ML could sort of just tell you, hey, give me these 5 personas of people that you really want to hire, right? We will go model them, we will go study it, we will try to understand what behaviors and what experiences they would have gone through, and let us potentially surface the similar profiles, right? And that means that a hiring manager or a recruiter who typically go on 2 different pages because of this English language job description piece that comes, just gets completely aligned, right? Because both of you are looking for the same kind of people.
Great. So what you're telling, Vijay, is really changing the whole paradigm. And instead of really looking for that purple squirrel that we always keep looking, right, as HR leaders, that I look for this profile, is really realizing that, okay, what's out there? And then accordingly say, okay, what's feasible? Yeah. Let's set the constraints first and then go and sharpen our focus as much as possible. Now, that to me makes a lot of sense. But are we actually doing that? While having technologies that are available to help us, the reality is that when I hear and I speak to a lot of recruiters and business leaders, I think we still do the same thing we used to do before. Give us your practitioner point of view, Yuvraj, about how do you really use those technologies to make a difference?
So I think taking up from where Vijay left, my experience of AI and ML is very different. A few years back, perhaps I wouldn't have understood what this artificial intelligence really means and what machine learning is all about. But being a part of an e-commerce company and rubbing shoulders with a lot of tech folks who basically talk about this and handling big data, figuring out how do you send notifications to people who are really, really keen to go to Goa, and they have been searching for Goa, they have been looking for a 3-star hotel or a 4-star hotel. So this whole thought of, identifying behaviors, patterns of people, and how do you convert into learning so that your decision making can become faster, it can narrow down your selection process, is all about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And when I look at it from my point of view, I was also pondering over this whole AI in hiring, and I realized that if one has to talk about AI in machine learning, out of all the domains of human resources, whether you call it learning development, operations, hiring, first place where this AI came in was hiring as a process. But I think perhaps it came in a very rudimentary manner in terms of application tracking system, whether it's a Naukri or Monster, started around 10, 12, 15 years back. But it has not gone beyond certain things which can create an impact in the organization. It all started with the fact that it will improve the efficiency, it will shorten the cycle time for the hiring. Has it happened or not is a question which always comes back to haunt us, right? And today when system has, or ecosystem has slightly got more evolved because of apps and e-commerce, again this whole thing has become far more contextual to see that can we really retrofit again and see that this can really improve our hiring processes. What my thought has been, there are complexities in this whole process. Complexities are, and I'm not talking that it is not of a value, it definitely is of a value, and I'll tell you how it is valuable, is complexities are in terms of data sitting at a very different corners when it comes to AI, machine learning and hiring. I search a job, or everybody searches a job on a different portals and different locations, perhaps goes and applies it somewhere else, and AI, machine learning and in hiring can only be successful in case a hiring manager or hiring organization can realize that a fellow who's being interviewed, 90% of the process has got completed, 10% is only left, and that's what we need to do, only meet and greet rather than doing anything else. So, but the data of interviews or the meetings are sitting in third organization wherever the person has gone. So how do you really link up all this data from 3 to 4 different sources and create a huge artificial intelligence so that this process becomes easier? Complexity also, I feel, is that, one side is the organizations which are hiring, and the other side, there are people who are looking for jobs or people who are applying. And both are very, very dynamic in terms of their evolution. People develop skills after 6 months, people develop preferences very, very differently. People have in-depth priorities and preferences which nobody is really privy to, and it changes very rapidly. If you talk about the organizations also change very rapidly. So how do you really bring in, a completely refreshed AI and machine learning around profiles and the organization's needs? That becomes another thing. And if I have to really, last thing what I need to say is that AI and machine learning, if it can help in hiring, visualization should be 5 years, 10 years down the line. A position gets created or vacant in an organization. Nothing happens within this by human interface. After 10 to 15 days, you have a candidate or shortlisted candidates available on your doorstep to really meet up with you. And this all happens through artificial intelligence and machine learning, right from creation of positions to identifying right people, informing candidates, getting them to fit the culture and the organizational need, and ensure that, organization is informed about the availability of people. So I don't know how will we reach that state, but that would be the stage wherein all this rigmarole and the processes gets completely shot down and it reaches to that. So that's what will be the final achievement here.
So Ganesh, before I go to you, and I want to take your cue and go to all of you in the audience, and maybe you can do that in groups of 3, where you're sitting. And you said that that's the end state, and you kind of paint the picture of where we are and where we could be. But if I may ask you just for 30, 40 seconds in a groups of 3, wherever you're sitting, what will be that number one obstacle that you feel is really stopping us from where we are to where we need to be? And if we can do that in groups, I'll just give you some 10, 15 seconds, and I'm looking for one word and not a sentence. So one word, what is the number one obstacle that it's preventing the recruitment teams in our organizations to really shift to that end state that you were referring to? So over to you, 10, 15 seconds, and then we'd love to hear from you. Just do it in groups, then I'll call all of you. Yes. Control. I'm trying to control this now, but okay. So let's hear from some of you, and I think we already heard that word. The first one we heard was control. So the need to control is what's stopping us. Can we hear some more words? Managers? The managers need clones. Very beautifully said. Okay, very nice. That's 3 words, but it's still beautiful. Yes. The mindsets, very nice. Okay. Personal touch is the fear of losing personal touch is what's stopping us. Okay, very nice. Sorry, say again. Having the right skills is what's stopping us. Very nice. Yeah. The fear of experimentation. Inertia. It's always worked. What to change? Very nice. What words? More words? Insecurities. Very nice. What will it mean to me? What will happen to my job? What will happen to my team's job? Yes? Yeah? Is it really going to work? Is it worth investing? Can I lose my job if it doesn't? Right? There is ROI or not ROI. More words? Lack of trust. Lack of data? Lack of data? Okay. Alignment between the business and the recruitment. So I think we've covered a lot of things, Ganesh, for you to now give us some solutions. Okay, so we are all looking for solutions. And if you need to bucket, there's skills, there's mindset, there's insecurities, then there's alignment. I love that piece of lack of alignment.
Right.
So
recruitment has 2 broad skills, right? One is just going and doing mass recruitment. That's not a recruitment. That's an assembly line operation. Just go hire and make people through the assembly line. The other part of recruitment, the way we do this is through like a matrimonial site. That's the way we marry today, right? So we go figure out what they say about themselves in the matrimonial site, call 2, 3 people, family, friends, what does he like, what does she like, and then we get married, right? And since there is social stigma and there is all these conversations, people get married and just kind of adjust in the long run. Imagine this in the corporate world. What if we had this idea about this person, not this person, But 2, 3 people, we date at the same time, we get to know everything about them, and then we get married and we choose, right? Today, our recruitment is stuck in the matrimonial stage. How do we take this to this, multiple dating, no social stigma, then we get married? I think then there is a lot more retention in that space. And there is a big change in technology, process, skill sets of recruiters, which needs to happen to go from this matrimonial stage to this multiple dating stage. And I think that is going to be the biggest challenge for the next 10 years. And I'm excluding this whole massive recruitment where you just go to campuses and hire in mass out of this. That's not recruitment, that's an assembly line operation. The skills you need for that is just, can I just make a process work and work very efficiently? That's the skills that you need. But this is the challenge.
So referring to that point about alignment between business and recruitment, from structure perspective, what makes sense for you as a business leader to say, well, should recruitment actually stay with HR? Should it move to operations and report directly to you? Should it be a separate function? Should we reporting to the CEO directly? Is there a one-size-fits-all? What's your point of view? How can we think through this question of structure differently?
Recruitment is not a HR job. Recruitment is the business leader's job. Ultimately, who you recruit and making sure that person stays with the company is the business leader's job. The best recruiter is the one who's enabling it and making it look as if it's their job without coming across like that.
Yeah.
The minute recruitment is outsourced to the HR, that fails.
So I love that provocation you just mentioned. And I would like to, with a raise of hand in this room, to say, well, if you're in your boardroom right now, and Ganesh is there as a visiting facilitator, let us say, and he posed the question to everyone in your board and say, whose job is to recruit? How many of you think will the group or the majority answer will be the HR head's job? How many of you will say, your team will say that's an HR's job? Okay? How many of you think that they will say that this is the business leader job, as he said? Okay, what about the other hands? Okay, all right. Say again?
Machine learning.
Overall. Yeah, but when it's owned by everyone, then it's not owned by anybody, right? It's a collaborative approach.
When it succeeds, it's the business leader's job. When it fails, it's the recruiter's job.
Very beautifully said. So let me come to all of you. Say again? Both the hands up. Wonderful. So let's see some questions, if we can see some questions that have come. And I want to make sure that we spend most of our time in questions, because our mandate when we were preparing, and we had some pointers we wanted to share with you, but was really about making this your session. So can we see the questions? Otherwise, we can have a mic. And what's the GPS in this topic? Beautiful question. And I think, Vijay, you have already answered. So you may actually want to reframe your answer.
So GPS in this scenario, what we and the panel were discussing was, could you sort of look at what data is available if you have to get to a point where you have to hire, let's say, 100 mid-level rockstar people? Are they, let's say, like for example, one of our organizations, large multi-MNC, basically wanted to set up a data science center in India, and they said we want to hire like some 1,000 data scientists. I'm like, dude, like there might not be 1,000 data scientists right now, not in the city at least where you are right now. Are you willing to move cities, right? So I mean, just like the basics of trying to see what kind of people are available, what comp range, what skills, is it possible or not? That's the GPS part, which sort of I think organizations, both business and talent acquisition, sort of really need to align on. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of hard work that will go somewhere from HR, and business will end up sort of being unhappy about the fact that, hey, where are my candidates? Where are the kind of people I want to hire? You would have seen this a lot as well, right?
I think before I comment on this, I should comment on what Ganesh said, right? I think that's the typical problem when it comes to processes pertaining to people.
Yeah.
The moment we create compartments that whose job is this question itself is perhaps very, very, what should I say?
Misleading already.
It's misleading, yes. Right?
Yes.
And no organization would ever say that HR hires people and transfers it to them. Yeah. I always say that, it's a rasam of Kanyadan, what happens normally. HR hires, but everybody is involved in getting that process completed. And when a person is sent to the business, there's a co-ownership in terms of, again, ensuring that both the person is succeeding, right? The moment business starts considering a resource as somebody who needs to really deliver without understanding the context and is a resource, not a human being, the person fails. In case HR basically takes its minds off from people who have been hired and sent to the businesses, and again people fail. So I think it's a process of hiring, which can never be in isolation. It has to have a buy-in and the collaborative effort from everyone's side.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Yuvraj, for sharing that. So let's see how many questions we have, because I can't see them in the app. So let me see a show of hands of questions in the room. So we have around 4 or 5 questions. If you're comfortable, can I take 2 or 3 questions at the same time? Because that's normally faster.
Yeah.
So can
You
we
gotta
have the
control it.
mics, and what we'll do is we'll take 3 questions, then we'll answer them, and then we'll go back to taking the 3 questions. So you have the mic. Just introduce yourself and just frame the question very sharply. Yes, over to you.
Anirvan, part of the HR team of CGI. The question is to you, sir. You did talk about
To who?
mass hiring.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, Ganesh, yes.
Ganesh.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
So you talked about mass hiring as an assembly line versus what we call sniper hiring, which is very specific, high touch,
Yeah.
and real recruitment. Here's the reality. Just like what happened in marketing, we need to have mass hiring because we are hiring in large numbers, but the high touch has to come into the mass hiring. We cannot treat it as if, the twain will not meet.
Right.
So is there technology that will allow us to do that?
Yeah.
And then what could be the top 2, 3 problem statements that technology is solving to help us do that? That's
That
the
is-
question.
It's really good you asked me this question. If you asked Vijay this question, he would do a pitch for his company right now.
Ganesh, just let me take the other 2 questions
Yeah.
and think through the answer, because to me that question is a session in itself. So I'll have to request you to be very brief with the answer. Let's take the other you had. Yes. please
Myself,
go.
Dr. Neerav, representing.
Sorry, say again.
Dr. Neerav here.
Yes, Neil.
I'm lead the global HR for the manufacturing company. My question to the panel member is like, since many years we used to hear that the role of any HR leader is to see the organization through the CEO's glasses. So what are the things which needs to be done when we used to, like we would be hearing in like short time that the role of any CEO is to see the organization to the HR perspective. So how we can compile that?
Thank you. Thanks, Neil. I'm going to request you, Yuvraj, to take that one. And then we'll take the last one, and then I'm going to request our panel to answer the questions. Yes. Can you state your name as well?
Hi, this is Rishi from Sapient.
Yes.
I have one question, and I picked up the example what data scientist you gave. So my problem statement is like I have to marry the assembly line as well as the sniper hiring, and the timing is also crucial because from the legacy planning of quarterly plans, demand is changing very agile, and I'm working on a weekly or a monthly plans. So where do you see GPS and the timing and the both concept of assembly line as well as the sniper hiring? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Ganesh, let's start with the first question about mass hiring versus sniper hiring, high touch. Can we really have high touch when we do mass?
Yeah. So, if you look at the recruitment spectrum and you look at where the highest personalized touch happens, that's in executive hiring, right? So, Egon Sanders and Conferees of the world. So, if you have interacted with any of them, if you look at their calendar, what they do, they're just having meetings. They just will talk to everybody they know, map the people, know what exactly is going on in their world. They will want to know when are they thinking about the next move. So they have this massive system, and my ex-secretary used to work for Egon Sanders. Every conversation they have with you is documented. Every move, how are you thinking about your career? All of it is documented. So that when next opportunity comes in, they know exactly how to map the people who are ready to do this job. Because these executive recruitments don't happen in that mass scale, so they're able to bring that personalized touch. So anywhere you see a business where there's a lot of profits, technology can disrupt it, right? So similar way, if you can bring the same insights about your candidates, create a pool of people for any of these jobs and get to know about them everything, which a human intervention gets to know, that is what is going to bring that personalization to scale. But the good thing is, unlike 10, 20 years ago, people say a lot about themselves in the social media. people say a lot about themselves in LinkedIn, people say a lot about themselves in Twitter, people say a lot about themselves in conferences when they speak. So there is so much to document about that profile, which doesn't need the suit boot, highly paid executive recruiter. A technology and with the right recruiter has got that mindset to use the technology, that's a good combination. So my answer is, the answer to this question relies on how do we map what an executive recruiter does, bring technology to it, and then scale it, right? And that's where I think the answer is for this.
Wonderful. So I'm going to ask Vijay to take the last question because I think it's interconnected.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so two things, just adding on to what Ganesh mentioned. So, one of our, one of our customers whose recruiting team basically does a fabulous job of sort of utilizing our product really well. They typically try to sort of look at anomalies of anyone putting their display pictures. Like typically people will put like a suit, tie, etc. on like their LinkedIn, etc. Right? But these guys typically ask us for image pictures of GitHub, Twitter, etc. Because from there they're able to understand this person in a very different way. And they use that as a unique skill to basically unique insight into sort of try and filter out people who potentially would sort of gel in, right? So some guy put Spider-Man with hanging his chaddis on a cobweb as a Twitter display pic is someone who's automatically sort of shortlisted, right? So now just with their eyes scrolling down across on the product, which we also didn't give them as a feature, by the way, that's how they're deciding whether to put this person in their funnel or not. So I think that one piece. And secondly, just to quickly add, I think there's this concept of re-engagement. So in marketing, people talk about, hey, how can HR as an organization be a marketing-driven organization? I think what marketing really does well is drip engagement, right? Drip marketing, sort of just keep going again and again. If I've got a customer, how can I sort of make them buy more? And which means that how do I sort of keep engaging them again and again? And for example, at Belong, we're a 100+ member team right now. Around 30 to 40% of our organization is a re-engage hire, right? So I mean, for me to be able to hire our CTO, he's the guy who built Google News. I've been talking to him for 2 years, right? Every month he gets an update on what's happening at Belong. He'll land up at a conference or an event that we are hosting. He'll participate in a hackathon. How do you sort of really re-engage so that as HR, then what you can do is be proactive to business and go say, look, I have a pool of data scientists ready. When you get your business in place, I have like 5 people I can just immediately hire because I'm re-engaging them so strongly and they want to now join us. So how do you sort of apply the Egon Zehnder thing into scaling this at scale? And it's actually one of our values that Belong, which is how do you scale personalization at each touch point?
Wonderful. Thank you. So let's take that question. I think it aligns very well with one thing we also wanted to cover, which is the point about our role is to see the world through the CEO's eyes and really be that extension. And I'm going to add that point we wanted to say, what if you have to hire for a visionary CEO? And I think many of you work with CEOs that may not really kind of understand the challenges, but say, you go out there, figure it out, find me a solution. So tell us how do we deal with this situation?
So the answer to second one is first, So when you are hiring for a visionary CEO, don't believe in AI and machine learning. So I think that would be very, very important. What will happen is that every time a CEO meets a person, will see people from a very different lens, right? There the intuition, gut, overall experience plays huge amount of role. How closely you have been in position to understand the need, context, and also try to relate it with the type of profile you are meeting. So giving my example, I work for Make My Trip and I work for Deep and Rajesh, who are the group CEO and CEO. They have a very different way of looking at profiles, right? Deep would look at culture fit, people who are good in communication, bring in huge amount of value in terms of analytics or business understanding, relating with people. That's his lens of looking at people. He says that if you hire the right culture fit, you can train people to adapt to various requirements of the business. Rajesh would look at things with this lens at the same time as somebody who can really be quickly scaled up. It shouldn't, because in today's world you can't really get somebody who can really be given leeway of 3 to 6 months to really learn and deliver. So I think everybody has a different way of looking at it. My experience had been that important is to understand the context in which hiring is happening. Understand also the context in terms of how quickly that hiring needs to be done. My favorite issue, what happens most of the time, is to look for that ideal profile. We spend so much of time, and we never get that ideal profile. My answer to all that had always been that, I think ideal profile also has to follow a timeline. In case you have a 2 months timeline, the position needs to be closed. So whatever is best you are in position to muster, you need to go ahead and hire and move on rather than really looking for that. So how do you really look at the immediacy, culture fit, CEO's idea about that role, what that role needs to contribute. And here what basically always fails, Esther, is that if you have a very standard job description for these roles,
That's right.
it fails. Because these standard job descriptions are made over a period of time by looking at every good value what
Yeah.
a role can bring in. I am sure that nobody would have got even beyond 50% of ticking yes to the job descriptions what we write. Because those are very aspirational and intelligent exercise done by the HR guys like us
Yeah.
and not by the business guys. You give them a JD, they will say 7 to 10 bullet points, this is what they need. I think
Yeah.
that's the way to look at the profiles in the market, and that's the way to look at the profile when it comes to CEOs,
Thank you.
hiring for CEOs.
Thank you so much, Yuvraj. And we have to close, and I want to ask each one of you, and you kind of already answered a little bit of it, on what should each one of us as recruitment engines, let's call us recruitment engines, what is it what we need to stop doing, what we need to start doing, and what we need to continue doing? And I think you've covered a little bit. So let me start with Ganesh, and maybe you can kind of summarize, just very briefly, one thing that you think we should stop doing, start doing, continue doing.
Yeah.
Ganesh.
I want to use the marriage analogy. I said if you, as a recruiter, act as a marriage broker, then you will be relevant. If you learn skills, use technology to act as the caring parent or an uncle or aunt who is getting the right alliances for the people you're working with, I think then you will become a lot more relevant. So the more you can move along the spectrum of from being a broker to somebody who really cares about the success of the marriage, I think that is an important journey to take.
Thank you. Thanks. Vijay?
Actually, just told, I was about to say stop being hunters and be farmers, where you basically stop like thinking that I have to like cutthroat hire this person right now versus think about belongingness, which is how we think about our organization as well. The other thing, just to add, I think what we should keep as recruiting teams is the emo element, which is the emotional element, the human element. While data, AI, ML might come, I actually don't agree with Yuvraj's statement of everything should get automated. I think there should be some human elements involved in the piece, which he brought for the CEO point. So, so I think it sort of applies to all positions, I think. And I think recruiters should be able to sort of really start think of themselves as marketeers, analysts, a little bit more for them to be able to enable themselves to be farmers. Right now, hunter is like, hey, pick up phone, call, dhad, 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 dhad. How do you sort of like change that out?
Thank you. Yuvraj, 5 seconds.
Thank you.
5 seconds.
Thank you.
So I think I agree with what Vijay is saying. Human element is definitely that is a common thread which can't really be pulled out of the whole process of hiring and recruiting. That needs to really be kept intact. What percentage is something what we need to really look at, and that's relevant. Other thing what I also, something what I think should be done is that we spend less time in terms of understanding the profile what we need to hire. If you look at the 3 processes, understanding the profile, shortlisting, screening, and then finally getting onto the final selection, interviews and all that stuff, maximum time is spent in the 3rd phase rather than the 1st phase. If that is done, perhaps that makes the whole process very successful.
Thank you so much. So let's give Ganesh, Vijay and Yuvraj a big round of applause.